Well, hello there. Today in class, we are going to be working with watercolor, and we are going to do kind of an atmospheric, kind of misty forest or trees. So what you're going to need is you're going to need a paper towel. You're going to need your paper. In class, we're going to tape it. We're just going to tape off the edge. So we have a very nice clean edge when we are all done. Okay, so we're going to have our paper. You're going to need your watercolors that you got in class. You're going to need 2 brushes. You can use your little brush, but you can use the ones that you borrowed from me. You're going to need your paints. You're going to need kind of your color chart. And you're going to need water. You can have 1 or 2 jars of water, whichever you prefer. I always like to have 2, but that's just me. So, okay. First thing we're going to do in class is we are going to make a monochromatic value scale. So we are going to pick one color that we want to do our watercolor painting in. It can be any of these colors. You can mix colors, but when you mix colors, you have to just make sure you keep mixing the same color. So I am going to just work in Payne's Gray. I'm going to make it simple for myself. I'm going to use Payne's Gray. So I'm going to wet down my little puck of color, and I am going to bring some over. And I am going to put it in one corner of my palette. Watercolor is different than acrylic because it's meant to be transparent. So you use water to alter your value. Whereas with acrylic, you can use white, you can use black, that helps you shift it. The acrylic, the color is the color. Whereas in watercolor, you're using water to change the value of this one color. So this is Payne's Gray. It's pretty dark. It's not quite black. It's got a blue tint to it. Okay, so that's pretty concentrated Payne's Gray. We are going to create 6 levels in our value scale. And how we do that is we make a little puddle. So we're going to take a little bit of paint from there, and we are going to add water to it. So the lighter the color means the more water. So more water means lighter value, and less water means darker value. So I'm going to paint this right here. Now I think I can get that lighter. Okay, so that's going to be kind of my 1 or 2. Watercolor always dries lighter. So I'm going to pick up some more water, and I'm going to dilute this little puddle right here a little bit more. And I'm going to see what that does. I'm going to try not to touch that other one. Now I'm happy with that as being my level 1. I think I can go in between there a little bit. So I'm going to make that my 2. And I'm going to water. I'm going to use this one as my 1. I didn't put these in order very well, did I? All right, now that I know, I'm going to use this as my 1. So here's my 1. Very faint, just a hint of color. My 2, a little bit more color. And then I just keep bringing in more color. You can use a scrap piece of paper too if you want to. No, I need more than that. There's my 3. There's my 4. You see how easy that is? Just bring in a little bit more color. My 5 could probably be a little bit darker. My 6 is going to be not quite straight panes, but pretty close. All right, we're gonna let those dry and we're gonna see how they turn out. That one could probably have just a little bit more color in it, but we'll find out. I'm gonna dry those and we'll be back. Okay, I'm back. All right, so you can see these two are pretty similar. These two are pretty similar. I might make them a little darker when I go to do my painting, but that's how easy it is. You just add water to the color. So I'm going to keep this handy, and we are going to start on the project now. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we are doing wet on dry. No, we're doing, yes, wet on dry. Wet paint on dry paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my lightest color. So I'm going to really water down this puddle. And I am going to paint my sky. I'm going to put a couple clouds in it. So I want you to kind of paint this along with me. I like to do some swoops on my sky. It's a good way to start out. You can do the sky in whatever direction, and then I'm going to add water in. So I want to go probably about 2/3 of the way down my paper. So I'm going to put some swooshes of color, and then I'm going to add water and let those kind of dissolve a little bit. So they'll lighten as I put water on. Now make sure you don't scrub with your bristles. Make sure you just kind of, if you want to go side to side, you can. Try not to push your bristles on your brushes. It's not good for watercolor brushes. I can add a little bit more. I want some of these swooshes to kind of stand out. I'm going to take my paper towel here in a second, and we're going to kind of work some clouds in here. That first run didn't get enough color down, so I'm going to come in and add a little bit more color. And then I'm going to kind of crumple up my paper towel and blot a little bit. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It doesn't have to be perfect clouds, just some variations in colors. Just to add some interest in the background. And then this is going to dry. We got to let this dry. Gotta let it dry. So let me dry this and I will be back. It takes, I don't know, it can take quite a while. So you can either use like a blow dryer. I have a heat tool, which gets really hot, so I don't use it, you know, really close to the paper. I just kind of blow it around and get the air moving. You can use a blow dryer. You can let it just sit and air dry. It'll take, I don't know, 5-10 minutes to air dry. But you have to dry this before you move on to the next layer. Otherwise, you will end up with a big blurry mess, which some of it, that's what we're going for, but not all of it. So I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. All right, so for our project, we are going to add in at least 3 layers of trees. I think our acrylic project, we did monochromatic mountains. I believe. We're going to kind of do the same thing, but with trees. So I'm going to mix up kind of my number 2. So a little bit darker. I want a good puddle of, might be a little too dark. Okay. And I am going to kind of coat, I want some ground, I want some foreground here, so I'm not going to go all the way, but I am going to lightly put in some trees. So we are doing pine trees, and pine trees kind of have an erratic shape to them. It's kind of a back and forth motion. Especially these back trees don't have to be very precise. They are going to be kind of, they might get kind of lost in the, forest here, but we want to bring them down into this area. Okay, we're gonna let that dry on its own. I'm gonna take more. So really in total, I want at least 10 trees in your painting. I also want at least 3 values in the trees. So I am gonna add another tree here. I mean, even pine trees you can kind of see through, so I don't want just a solid blob necessarily. I want some variation in the tree. Okay, I want at least a few more treetops back here. I think I want something a little taller. If I feel like that's a little too dark, I can lift it up. Yeah, I think this isn't going to get as misty as I kind of had hoped it would, but that's all right. We're just going to do the atmospheric. Okay. All right, that has to dry, so I will be back. Okay, I decided to throw another tree in here, and then I realized this little part of this tree got a little too dark. So to fix that, I'm just going to wet down my brush, not dripping, but just damp. And I am going to kind of go over that again and take a paper towel and kind of dab it up. So that will lighten that value scale and pick up some of that excess color. Then I can go back in with my lighter color. Now this is going to get covered up, so I'm not too worried about what it actually looks like, but I don't want these hard edges either. So if you have hard edges like this, you can lightly scrub them out with your brush. Now look how I'm just using the tip very lightly. I'm not actually like bending the bristles back. Okay, I'm going to dry that and I'll be right back. All right, and remember, you can tell if your paper is still wet if it's cold. Usually the back of your hand is a good way to tell if it's cold. I don't like how that's turned out, but that's okay because I can cover it with another tree and that will be just fine. Okay, so that's layer 1. That is level 1 of trees. So I'm going to take and mix up. So that's this, let's see, we're right about in there. So that's level 2. So I'm going to try and mix up my level 3. So puddle water and just, let's see if that's right. Okay, so I'm going to pick another tree and I am going to come in here. And start adding in my next tree. So the closer they get to us, the darker they become. And like the trees that are closer, I am going to have a little more definition in them. They're going to look a little more detailed. The atmospheric trees in the back, the further away, the less detail they have. That's just how the atmosphere works. Like if you're driving to school on a misty morning, when you look out over the distance, things further away are very blurry, and the things closer to you have all the detail they need. So that is kind of what we're doing. The further we come forward, the more detail we're going to add in. Okay, and I'm leaving my ground because we are going to add some shadows under these trees just to create that dimension. All right, that looks like the right shade. Now I got to recreate it. Uh-oh. I put in a 4th tree. I don't know if I said that. I put in a 4th tree because I want you guys to have at least 10 trees. And so one layer is going to have at least 4 trees. The other 2 can have 3. But again, you can do more than that too. Okay. My next tree, I think I'm going to do a smaller tree. Kind of here. Now you can draw a trunk or you can do it freehand. It's fine either way. And the trick with pine trees is to keep them from looking like big blobs. Okay, there's that one, and I think I'm going to do one kind of coming off my page over here. Kind of a half tree. That needs to be a little darker. Okay, hopefully your tape is stuck down well. If not, it's not the end of the world if it runs under. Okay, look, I've got quite a bit of water there. We don't want big puddles, but I can move that puddle around quite a bit. Okay, a lot of just back and forth motion. Some I'm just dabbing, some I'm just swooshing. But trees have texture, okay? Trees aren't just a big triangle, all the same color, no variations. Trees have light showing through them. They have dark spots. So those trees in the front, we're going to add a little bit more dimension to them. Okay, so there's 3 trees on my next layer. So I've got 7 trees done already. So I need to get in my last. Okay, so that one, yep, is right in there. That one might have got a little dark. Again, I could lighten that up if I wanted to. I want to come in with a wet brush and just kind of pick some of that up. I can do that, or my paper towel. That will lighten that whole thing. Okay, let me dry this and I'll be back. All right, back again. Okay, so I've got my 2 levels of trees, 2 different values in trees, and I've got to do 1 more. So I don't want it quite that level. That I'm going to use for shadowing, and so I still want to water this down just a little bit. Get my puddle, but I do want it quite a bit. I want good darkness to it. Okay, I think that'll be good. All right, so I need 3 more trees. So I'm going to put a nice big one right here in the middle. Okay, and I want more detail in this tree. So the second years can choose to do it if they want to do it in different colors. But I want some shadowing on these closer trees, some variations in them. So I'm going to first put down my tree. And so these closer ones, if you want to kind of show where there's placement more, you can kind of add some branches in here if you need a guide, because we are putting more detail in these. Okay, I'm going to do one of those kind of cool droopy, oh, what are they? Dr. Seuss trees. I don't know what their actual breed is or species or whatever they are, what kind of tree they are. But I just want something a little more dimensional. So again, I am just kind of dabbing my brush more than swooping. I'm creating that needly kind of texture that I want, that you kind of see in a tree like this. Their branches are kind of a little bit offset. They get a little wider as they go. My problem is I make them so wide at the bottom that it looks like a big old triangle on my page. Okay, so lots of dabbing. We're just giving the impression of the clumpy, branchy trees. I mean, you've all seen a pine tree, you know they're not perfect. Watercolor, we generally work light to dark because you cannot put light over dark, whereas acrylic, you can take, it's opaque, so you can take white paint and paint right over any color that's been dried. Watercolor is not like that. You cannot paint light over dark. You have to plan more with watercolor. So there's things called like, there's a glue, it's a masking fluid, that's what it's called, that if you want to keep an area like perfectly white, you can lay down this masking fluid and paint over it, and then once your painting is fully dry, then you remove it and then you have your white area. Otherwise, you generally just have to paint around the places you want white. So it does get a little more technical. You definitely have to think about, ooh, that got really dark. You definitely have to think about what you're doing with watercolor. If you are painting a full painting from start to finish, you have to plan it. Watercolor, I mean, you can wing it. It's definitely something you can do, but Sometimes you run into problems when you get to a point you're like, oh, I forgot to plan for that. Sometimes you can lift watercolor out, you can lift some colors out, but some colors are kind of a staining color and they won't lift out. Okay, there's my big middle tree, and then I'm going to do two more. Probably, let's do a smaller tree here. You gotta be careful when you get close to this tree. You don't want it to oops, that got a little dark. Pick some of that up. All right, and then I need one more tree. I'm gonna go right on the edge here. Okay, I'm gonna go dry that and then I will be back again. Okay, I'm back again. It's really cool if you do it in Payne's Gray. You can kind of see the colors separating. I think Payne's Gray is a mixture of ultramarine blue and probably burnt sienna, or something of that color. So you can kind of see the browns coming through here, and you can really see the blues. So it's kind of cool. Ultramarine blue is a granulating color, which means that it kind of separates when it dries, and then you kind of get these really cool variations in there. So, little fun fact for you. All right, so now I have my 10 trees, and I want to put in a little bit more detail. I'm going to make a thicker, less watery version of my Payne's Gray, and I'm going to come in kind of underneath the branches and along the trunk. So anywhere there is a, ooh, that's really concentrated. Anywhere there is a, I don't want a whole lot on my brush, a branch kind of like veering off, I'm going to add some darker kind of along the bottom of it. Okay, you can already see it's just adding a little bit of dimension. And I am all about creating that dimension in your projects. That's what makes them believable. All those values you put in there. You could have painted this all with the same value and it just would have looked like a flat painting of a bunch of trees. You would have figured out that it was trees, but it wouldn't have been believable. I mean, that almost makes it look like there's like a dark snow on there. I mean, you can put little dots of darkness elsewhere, but all right, look at that. Adds a lot of dimension to the tree. All right, I'm gonna do that a little bit over here. That got really dark. Let me pick some of that up. This tree, I'm just kind of randomly doing it all over the place. Okay, there's tree number 2 and tree number 3. All right, there's my 3 closest trees. All right, so those are fairly dry in the bottom. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some shadowing and our foreground. So we've got our background, we got our midground, and now we need to add in our foreground. So direction kind of matters when you paint in watercolor, because you do see all the brush strokes, and that kind of indicates what we're looking at. So for our ground, I am going to make side to side, because that's telling us something different than front to back. And I want it really dark underneath my trees. Okay, so I almost picked straight up out of there. I wet it down first, and then I'm gonna let it kind of move like we did before. Okay, so I'm gonna get up in those white spots right under my tree. And then I'm gonna pull it down. Okay, and let it kind of run. And I want to wet this back here and under there. Actually, I don't like how that... I'm going to lighten that up as it goes back, because there is that little last layer peeking through. So it wouldn't be that dark back there. All right. And I might pull some just variations down in here. And put it. Okay, so you can see my ground is, it's ground. It's not the same as the trees. It's not the same as the sky. It's going in a different direction. I'm going to put a heavy bit right by this tape and let those blend together. And I am going to go dry that, and we will see what we got now. I'll be right back. All right, that's dry. I'm just going to add in a couple more things, and then I'm going to be pretty close to done. I want a little bit more random dark places in here just to kind of tie it into the bottom. I feel like that got lost just a little bit. So since that's dry, I can go back over and it's not going to flare like it did before. So I can add that kind of bottom of the tree back in. Okay, and that kind of fades off into the back, so that looks good. The only part that doesn't read well is right in here. I'm just going to darken that just a little bit. And if I want, I can just add some more swoops in the ground. I mean, that if you can see how that kind of bled up and got really streaky, I love that. I think that looks fantastic. So I'm not going to do anything to get rid of that. I just want to take that tone just a little bit higher, and you could even do like some grass lake. All right, I'm going to dry that again. All right, I am very happy with this. The only thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to add in a couple little birds. So, you know, kind of a sky without birds. I'm going to get a really light, probably my number 2. And I'm just going to put some little birds in here, flying off into the distance. They should be getting lighter as they go away though. All right, that one's gonna be a little darker. He's closer. Remember, they get closer, they're gonna get darker. So that's how we gauge distance and size, and all of that talks to us about that. Communicates what we're trying to communicate with our art. All right, so when you're done with it, when it's fully dry, you can carefully take off your tape. And voila, our watercolor trees. So second years, you can use colors if you want. First years, you're going to do monochromatic. But there you go. I hope you enjoy this project. It does take a little bit of time because you do have to dry in between each layer. But I hope you take the time, and I hope you really enjoy yourself. And I will see you next week. All right, bye.